Hey guys, thanks for choosing to listen to the Run Adjacent podcast. It's really cool of you. A couple of things before we get into the episode. Thank you to Trick Trail and Fish for proudly supporting the podcast. Be sure to visit their website, tricktrailfish.co.nz. Use my discount code RA10. That will get you 10% off your order, and orders over $150 will get you free shipping. The next point. If you want to run the Whangarei Run Walk Festival, visit www.sportnorthlandevents.co.nz. The Whangarei Run Walk Festival is happening on Sunday the 15th of September. There is a half marathon distance, an 8.5 and a 4K. Now, if you want 20% off the North Cloud Whangarei Run Walk Festival, use my discount code RA20. See what I did there? RA10, RA20. Now, Tamsin Horne. I'm going to hand it over to Hannah now, who is going to blow your mind away with this amazing interview that she did with Tamsin. Enjoy.
Kia ora koutou. We have a really great guest today, Tamsin Horne. She is a kitty-based multi-sport athlete and runner with a really interesting story to tell. She was told she would never run again after suffering an AVM brain hemorrhage. She's bucked that advice and has been absolutely smashing it lately. Welcome to the podcast, Tamsin.
Hey, hi.
So I'm really excited to get into this. I've known you for years and years now, going back to when we were in our teenage years and we swam together. So just looking back at your life in your early years and your teenage years, what was your life like leading up to your brain trauma, and what sports did you play, and what were your goals, and what did life look like back then for you?
Life was pretty busy. I dabbled in a lot of different sports. I did club water polo, school water polo, competitive swimming with you, and also did cross country and really enjoyed cross country. My dad was a really keen advocate for just keeping kids busy and active, and so we just kind of jumped on that and put our hands into everything. Athletics. As I kind of entered more my adolescent years, you picked what you were better at, and you couldn't do everything with just fatigue of a young teenager. So I went more down to just swimming and running, and they were my two main things. But with swimming came water polo as well, and held on to that. Goal wise, I just was enjoying it, just busy, sporty, and loved it. Yeah,
that's really cool. Can you just talk about, I remember back when we were swimmers, like it was quite intense, like we talk about dabbling in a little bit, but how often did you train?
Probably not the word dabble is quite right. We swam 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night, Monday to Friday, and 2.5 hours on a Saturday morning, and then often would compete on a Sunday or Saturday, Sunday competitions if it fell on a weekend for comp.
Yeah. Definitely.
So dabble, not really.
And both of your sisters also did the same.
Yeah, my brother as well. He quit swimming first and went on to cricket, but myself and my two sisters carried on. They were incredible swimmers. I was a good swimmer, but I'm little. I've always been petite. So swimming, I was good at it, had the aerobic base, but I was never going to be a super fast, Olympic swimmer or anything like that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So can you talk us a little bit through sort of, I guess, what happened on the day that you had your hemorrhage, and what can you remember from it, and if you can remember anything? So
I can remember quite a lot leading up to it, and I actually, prior to the day, I went to my local GP I think 4 months before I actually had my brain hemorrhage. Something wasn't right. I felt really foggy, things weren't right. I'd lost a bit of weight, and the doctor kind of just put it down to just adolescence, probably hitting puberty, and there was nothing really said or done, but I was experiencing headaches and just didn't feel right within myself. And I've got a really good feel for when I'm not right. I've always been like that. And so on the day of the event, I was at school. I had a math test that day, and I just felt rubbish. My vision was funny. It was almost like a migraine. I hadn't ever experienced a migraine, but I knew that when you do have a migraine, your vision does get altered. So I was like, maybe it's just a migraine. But I felt really off, and a friend of mine from school was like, Tams, are you all good? You don't look right. And I was like, no, I feel shit. Like, I feel yuck. So I rang my dad and just said, Dad, I don't want to be at school today, which is not like it for me. I've always been a little bit of a go-getter. And, you know, for me to call Dad being like showing an ounce of vulnerability, he was like, oh, okay, I'll leave work. I'll come get you. And he did ask, he's like, well, you've got a math test today. Like, are you trying to get out of it? I was like, no, Dad. Like, I just feel shit. So yeah, went home. And when I got home, I just went to bed and slept for about 6 hours. And when I woke up, it was late afternoon. It was probably like 4:30, 5 o'clock. And I stood up and was like, oh yeah, okay, I feel all right, like feel okay, and got into the shower. And I collapsed in the shower. It was like getting shot in the back of the head with a shotgun. I just, collapsed. The most traumatic pain I've probably ever experienced in my life. And I don't remember whether I screamed mum or just screamed, but we had a lock on our bathroom, and for some reason I didn't lock the door that day. And so my mum came running in. This is probably a question for her, really, because at that point, that's where I don't remember. But mum then obviously got me out of the shower. I was vomiting in the toilet, and they straight away rang the ambulance. My mum was an emergency nurse, so she was like, whoa, okay, something's happened here. When the paramedics got there, they eventually apologised to me and my mum, but at the time were like, oh, is it just a dramatic teenager? And mum was like, no, there's something neuro here. And so, I was taken to Middlemore Hospital. We were living in Auckland at the time. Middlemore Hospital doesn't have a neurology department. It's only Auckland. And straight away they could see that it was neuro. Something wasn't right. Again, no recollection of this. And was then taken to Auckland Hospital taken to Auckland Hospital, and that's me. I don't remember a lot from there. I do, but I don't. Like, I remember the pain. There was a couple of days where I wasn't coherent, and that's when I went in for CT scans, and they could see what the problem was, and it was just a massive brain bleed. And did heaps of scans, but they couldn't operate until the bleed had actively stopped. So that took, I think it was 17 days. And in that time, I did come out of an induced coma, but I was blind. So where the bleed of my brain occurred is what's called your occipital lobe of the brain. It's basically where your octave nerve and brain connect and send messages to each other. So when I woke up, I couldn't see a thing. And that for me was the biggest blow. And I said to my mum, I was like, I don't want to live if I'm blind, Mum. And I said it every single day. And Mum's like, Tamsin, stay positive. I was like, no, I don't want to live if I'm blind. And so that was, I look back on that and I'm just like, oh, that poor girl.
Yeah, totally.
And it wasn't until after surgery, which they had warned my family there was a really slim chance, there was a chance that things could go wrong. Like, it was a big operation. My scar was huge, so it was a very big operation. I was in theatre for quite a long time. And so when I woke up from surgery, I don't know the days, the time, like I don't know how long I was out for and all of that sort of stuff. I wasn't completely blind. I could see, but I could only see like pretty much a pin strip of light. And every day post-recovery, that light strip got a little bit bigger. And my surgeon just said, every day you've got to go with what comes. You may never get your sight back, but it may. The brain is an interesting thing. You've got to let it recover. Yeah. So,
So what were they telling you at the time, other than obviously they weren't sure what your vision was going to be like? What did they say in terms of like how you would be physically?
As I said earlier, where the bleed was occipital lobe. So they did have a positive on a negative, which was if you're going to have a bleed, you've had it in the best place possible. If it was a fraction up, it would have been cognitive, memory, physical disabilities, all of that. So I was always given like, you've had it at the best possible place, which was great. But at the same time, it was still like, I don't think any bleed is great. And they just kept having to reiterate the fact that, this is going to change her life forever. This is a major. But, you've got the best possible surgeon. And I did. My surgeon was a guy called Andrew Law, and he is like the top in Australasia. He did Rolling Stones. Is it Rolling Stones? He operated on the guy from the Rolling Stones that got injured in Fiji. So I had the best possible surgeon. So he just would have just kept supporting my parents and telling them, plan for the worst, but also stay positive and that sort of stuff. But I don't remember that side of it that well.
Yeah. Did you know, and I guess we're going to talk about this a little bit more. We might be jumping around a little bit.
That's fine. That's all good. That's right.
But,
it's a complex story.
Yeah. I suppose, like, you know, it's really affecting your life today, and we're going to go into that shortly. But back then, were you told how your life would be affected, or they weren't sure?
I think it was a matter of not sure. Like, so the day it happened to me, it happened to a bleeds, like a brain bleed, happened to 11 other people. On that weekend, out of all 11, only 2 survived, me being one of them. And the other survivor, I saw him a year post-op, and he was completely like wheelchair, paralytic, like he was not cognitively there anymore. So having all that around, my parents didn't really know what to think. It was like, well, okay, she's alive, many aren't. So it was just take one day at a time. You can't, and that's kind of been like a little mantra of myself and my parents. It's just one day at a time, one step, like step by step, because every day brought a new challenge, and every day brought a new, like, you know, thing to the table. So it was an unknown. Anything neuro is really unknown.
Complex.
Super. And the brain's fascinating, but they still don't know so much about it, so you couldn't really say this is how it's going to be. It was like, just take time, see how it goes.
It might happen to someone else, your exact thing,
yes,
and they will have a different response.
100%. And that was one thing, is there was lots of positives thrown at me in the haze of the crap, and one was, it's happened to you at the best possible time in your life, because at the time I was only 15, just shy of turning 16, and your brain is still developing in so many ways, whereas if it happened to someone who was like 75, they're going the other way. So they just kept always reminding my parents, she's young, she has the ability to bounce back. So yeah, it was always a little bit of an added bonus.
Yeah, totally.
Terrible, but
yeah, definitely. I think like that's a testament to you, that you do always see the positive in everything, and you could totally have gone the other way, right, and just been like, I'm just going to give up, like this is way too hard. But you've almost like taken it as a way to be like, I can do this, and like, you know, like you're so strong, and like you've used it to almost fuel you. Like,
thank you.
It's almost been like, it's the opposite, like it's fueling you, like, rather than.
I'm not gonna lie, there was a very long period of time where I wasn't that.
Yeah.
And I mentally was not, like, it screwed me over. Like, I went from being this really strong, like independent, fierce, fiery, athletic kid to just, you can't do this, you can't do that. And my parents were really good. They never like cotton band-aided me or anything like that. They didn't bubble wrap me. They just took it, you know, again, one day at a time kind of philosophy. But it did, everyone around me changed, and that had a huge impact on me. I was the sick kid. Overnight, I went from being this healthy girl that wanted to thrive to being this kid everyone was scared of.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a really hard adjustment for a 15 turning 16
totally, especially when you're like a 16-year-old girl. Like, I suppose if it happened to one of our friends now, we would be like, wow, that's such a big thing. And we'd be more understanding, right? Because we're at an age now where we've had lots of life experience, and but when you're 16, it's like, to your friends, it's like, they wouldn't understand that.
No, and there was rumours spread left, right and centre. Like, so no one really knew what was going on. They just knew that Tamsin almost died, she's in hospital, and there was speculation of suicide and all sorts of stuff. Like, it was really, really heavy. Yeah. So my mum actually had to go into the school and say, hey, look, this is what's happened. And yeah, I think even for my mum to have to do that was pretty shit. Like, but it just was the era we lived in, and everyone gossiped. And I think the biggest part for me was going back to school. Like, I struggled. I needed, like, how do I explain it? I had one side of me that so badly just wanted to put it behind me, but I couldn't, because it was so apparent to my current existence. And one side that tried to, but no one else wanted to accept that I was still the same person. So like there were times where I would walk into a bathroom and I could hear girls, say I was in the cubicle, and there would be a party on that weekend. Oh no, we can't invite Tamsin. What if she has a seizure here? Or, you know, like, so there was bullying that went in with it as well. And there was just this big label of like, imperfect.
Invite me to the party and I will make the decision for myself.
100%. And like, in saying that, I did have like the most amazing friends. Like, I look back in my high school years, and there was a lot of crap times in it, but I had some really beautiful souls in my corner.
And you're still friends with them today, I noticed.
Yeah, still am.
Yeah.
And I owe a lot of my, like me still being here, to my friends that nurtured me through that, protected me through that. And same for like my parents and family. Like it did bring us all closer together in ways, but it was really interesting basically just to see how other people reacted to my trauma. It became about other people in ways, and that I struggled with.
Yeah. I know it's evolved over time, and I think when it first occurred, you were probably having like many seizures a day, and I know your journey from then to now, it looks different today than it probably did, like, I don't know, a year, even 2 years afterwards.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that evolution of like what you experience today maybe, and like how that's changed over time?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
what it means for your day-to-day life.
When I first came out of theatre from my initial surgery, I had a massive big drain in the back of my head, and when they finally were like, okay, she is stable, we need to remove it and just see where she's at, when they took and removed the drain out, my dad at the time was standing right by my bed, and I was just looking up at him. I could kind of see him, kind of couldn't, and all he remembers is my eyes rolling to the back of my head, and that's when I had my first ever seizure. And so from then on, it was pretty much like, okay, the aftermath of this is going to be that she will have seizures. And I had a couple more in hospital at that time, and the diagnosis was pretty clear that post-trauma epilepsy was the biggest, diagnosis that I would walk away with, obviously with the visual stuff too. And from then onwards, I'd have some pretty big seizures. So it's hard to break down, but I have a couple of different types of epilepsy. But at that initial time, I was having what's called clonic-tonic grand mals, and they're the scary ones. They're the ones where I did get an aura. I could taste metal, and I would know, okay, I've got about 2 minutes to 30 seconds. Wouldn't know, but I could just slowly feel my body lose control. Consciousness would go, and I'd wake up not knowing who I was and vomiting profusely.
Those are the ones where you fall to the ground and you... Speaking of seizures, I'm just having my own one here. No, it's just my blood sugar's going high. They're going high, we're fine.
Where are we at?
It overrides my do not disturb.
It's all right, girl. Invisible trauma. It's fine.
Yeah, so the clonic tonics are the ones where you basically, you fall, because I think people will want to understand this, you actually fall to the ground, don't you?
Yeah.
And you're not there, whereas you can have seizures where you look like you're present.
Yes.
So, yeah, I just thought it might be interesting for the listeners to know what does that mean, because people might think of seizures as either being the ones where you fall to the ground or where you look like you're still there, but you're actually having a seizure.
So clonic tonics for me, I wouldn't in those ones fall to the ground. I would get what's called an aura. Yeah. Not everyone gets an aura though. So I would get an aura that would give me that warning, so I could notify or just be able to say like, oh shit, I'm like, where can I get that safe kind of thing. And they would be the ones that you would have massive fits, turn blue, look like you're biting your tongue. And for me, calorie wise, you burn a shit ton of calories. Every muscle in your body's seizing, but I don't know, I'm not aware. Whereas the person observing it's probably more traumatized by the seizure than the person having the seizure. They're scary, and I don't like those ones. And so when I first had my bleed, they were what I was having most frequently, and that was just based around scar tissue developing, trauma, obviously, trauma to the brain, having my brain cut open, a little bit of it removed, there was a lot. And so that they didn't know if they would be forever or if they were just while my brain was figuring itself out. They lasted several years, and I remember my mum had this little black book, and in that black book, it was just like a calendar book. She'd put a big circle, not big, but a little black circle on the days I'd have seizures, and it would just slowly, every page you turn, the seizures on that month were way more apparent, and they were just, these little circles were just filling the pages. And I was, I think the most I ever had in a day was 7, and I could go every 3 days, have more. It was pretty bad. But they were, as I said, the clonic tonic, the big grand mals. But I also, in that, developed what's called pseudo-seizures. So pseudo-seizures replicate a grand mal seizure, but where they come from and what causes them, the trigger's different. So the clonic tonic ones were caused by brain physical trauma. The pseudo-seizures were developed without my knowledge from PTSD. So with all of this happening, I didn't realize how mentally it had affected me. I think I came out of that whole situation wanting to be a little warrior, like, yeah, I survived, and didn't realize how much it actually mentally fucked me up. And it,
So that stress is now showing through
the body.
seizures.
Yeah, so similar to people who go to war and then they end up having all these crazy side effects. That's the category I fell into. At this point, the grand mals stopped happening as regularly, but the pseudo seizures consumed my life. And that's when it happened, I was in fifth form. I went back to school in that first, I think there was 2 more months left of the school by the time I was just, discharged from hospital, and I just wanted to go back. And I did. I never did exams or anything like that. And then I went back in sixth form and I tried, but I just couldn't keep up, and I couldn't focus. I was tired. I was just not in a good place. But I actually got my sixth form cert. I did all of my what do they call it? Internals? Yeah, all of my internals. But again, I just couldn't do the exams. I was in hospital throughout the whole period of exams. And seventh form, I tried to go back, but I was in hospital more than I wasn't. And I went back more for just the social aspect of it, I suppose. But I ended up kind of being a bit of a burden. I know that. I was a bit of distraction to other people, and I wasn't going to classes, but I just wanted to be there and try. I just wanted to find some normality, basically. But yeah, so at that point, the seizures were happening more often than they weren't. And those were, as I said, the pseudo seizures. They probably crippled my life for, I'd say, about 8 years. 8 years? Yeah, about 8 years. And I don't think I handled those 8 years well. I don't know what to do. Yeah. You're not living, you're existing, but you're not living.
But also it was like you were limited to what you could do, right? So I'm assuming you couldn't run at that time. You couldn't.
Well, when I first did leave, my surgeon did say you can't do any contact sport, but go out and live your life. So try and see, find your barriers, find your limits essentially, but don't let this hold you back. He said it would take you a minimum of 10 years for you to feel normal. In that time, so it'll be a minimum of 10 years for you to feel normal, and even might take you even longer. You've got a lot that you're going to need to learn to work around within your own self and coming out from this. And so I did dabble with stuff. So I did start running again. I did run prior to that. But it was in sixth form or seventh form, one of our PE things we had to do was we had to run for X amount of time. We're learning about aerobic fitness and anaerobic fitness. And on the aerobic fitness day, we all went out on maybe an hour and a half, a 2-hour run. And I went to St. Kitts at the time, and we could go out of the school property, loop around. It was a really cool area we could run. I never made it back. So I went out, and I was a good runner, so I was running on my own, and at that point, I ended up having a clonic-tonic seizure. I got my aura, and I was like, oh shit, okay. And I just ran into some random person's property out east and was like, hey, my name's Kristen. Didn't even know my own name. And I was like, I'm epileptic, I'm gonna have a seizure. Boom. And I woke up in hospital. And when my neurologist came and saw me, she was like, you just can't. You can dabble in the way of 3K, but you can't put yourself under exertion for long periods of time. You will fatigue yourself. Fatigue will cause a seizure. If your core temperature gets too hot, you will have a seizure. So it pretty much from there just meant that long distance running was out, which that was kind of like my other love. Yeah. And so that's what I believed. And because I had firsthand experienced what that did, and it caused a seizure. So looking back, I don't actually think it was the running that caused the seizure. I think that was where my mental health was starting to really crack, because that would have been about 2.5 years after the initial event. And also, this is one I've actually never spoken about, I don't even think on my socials, but for the first 2 years after my original surgery, I kept hearing a click in my head. So I'd walk downstairs, click. I'd jump, click. I'd do anything, click. And it felt yuck, and it was causing seizures. And I was getting told, there's no way, you're not clicking. We've fixed everything up. And I had a 2-year, maybe it was 3 years, I can't remember, 2-year meet up with my brain surgeon, and I brought it up with him, and he was like, no, like, you know, you would have healed, everything's fine. And I said, please, I want a scan. Like, I'm entitled to a scan, I want a scan. So he was like, okay, sweet. Like, yes, absolutely. Had a scan, and it showed that where they'd cut out a big square of my skull to obviously operate on the brain, my skull hadn't fused. So this bit of skull essentially on one side was moving, like it hadn't fused back together, so it was clicking. And he was like, okay, it's only the corner, so you know, we'll put you on the waiting list. So I waited, I think, another 6 months because it wasn't priority. I wasn't acute at this point. And then finally my surgery came, and sure enough, nothing of that 4 walls of that square had healed. No idea why.
So it was just
literally sitting there, moving and hitting the other side of my skull. Probably float. Well, it was, because it would have been a little bit smaller than the skull around it. So gross. And it was just shifting, like a little piece of square shifting. And the click I was hearing was it colliding with the other side of my skull.
Wow.
And the seizures I was probably having was probably my skull hitting my brain. Like, it's disgusting. So, obviously had surgery number 2 to fix that. And that was mental. So I think a lot of those seizures in the original phase were because my skull was moving around. Yeah. So they put what's called calcium phosphate and, fused everything manually together. And that was, I think I had that surgery when I was like 20, maybe 19. So it was several years later. So those initial seizures, that would have been the cause, as well as other things as well. But
That's insane. That's absolutely insane. So did you feel like things after that surgery got a little bit better?
Not hearing your head click, yes. So I felt real good in that regard. But at that point, my mental health was really snowballing downhill.
Yeah, okay.
So yes, physically, I would say things felt better. But when my mental health went downhill and the pseudo seizures kicked in, that was a whole nother, it was a whole nother level of shit too.
Yeah.
So it's a hard one to answer. I feel like for about 10 years there, it just got worse before it got better, really.
In terms of your mental health or in terms of...
Yes, I think there was a phase there where I was in such a bad space, and I remember my mum saying to me on multiple occasions, like, Tams, it's okay to be upset, like, you're allowed to be angry. Sorry.
Yeah.
And
totally.
I think for a long time I just didn't want to be vulnerable, and I think that's because I look back, so as an adult I've been able to unravel a lot of it, but I look back and when it happened there was so much, not pressure, but I was constantly reminded of, you're so lucky to be alive. You're so lucky it happened to this part of the brain, not this part. You're one of 11 that are up and walking, one's in a wheelchair, like, you are like the lucky one. So I had this mentality that I had to believe how lucky I was, and in my head I was like, I'm not fucking lucky, this is horrible, this is terrible. But I didn't want to show people that I felt that way because it almost looked ungrateful. Not ungrateful, but definitely. I'm alive. So I think for me, I wanted to, I don't know, I wanted to be brave to respect the fact that I was given that second chance. But when I look back on it, I'm like, man, you could have just been vulnerable and let yourself grieve. And that's something I never even knew about until a little bit as I got older, that you can grieve an old version of yourself. Because I will never be the same person prior, from what I was prior to that happening. So I never had the chance to grieve the loss of that teenager. And it did, I'd say, take a lot of my fun out of my adolescent years. I wasn't a normal adolescent. And then I think I tried to go a little bit above and beyond, and for ages obviously I couldn't drink when my peers could. I was just very the sick kid. And then when I finally felt like I had a little bit of confidence around my own self and healing and stuff like that, probably drank a little bit too much. And every weekend became like a just drink to cope, like a bit of a party gal. And I don't regret it. It was fun. Like, we had so many good nights, but I look back and I think the only reason I was doing that was just to try and find happiness.
Is it an escape?
Yeah, hugely. Escape? I didn't have an issue with alcohol or anything like that, but I found that in order to keep up with my peers socially, I would drink too much because they were all happy drinking. Why wasn't I? So it created just a bit of a messy period for me, I would say.
Yeah, and you probably also felt like, oh, this is like one way I can fit in. Like I can go out and do all this drinking that even though it probably wasn't your thing per se, because it doesn't really, probably looking back now, it doesn't align actually with what your core values and morals are.
Doesn't.
But
and
you probably saw it and were like, yes, I can do this.
Oh, 100%. And I think as well, when you're the girl that has seizures in so many social situations, I always tried to find my calm. So I'd be like, I'll just have a drink, it'll take off the edge kind of thing. So it was a coping mechanism and tried to make me feel a little bit less socially awkward. I developed all sorts of weird social anxieties and it wasn't great. I got a bit twitchy and just didn't like being in social situations, and that's even me to this day. Like I'm not the most social person. But back then, drinking allowed me to be that, and it allowed me to be normal. So, and now I don't touch alcohol. I haven't touched alcohol in years, and I'm like, oh my God, no way. But it took, when you're a teenager, you just dive deep and try to keep up with your peers, but I couldn't keep up.
So, definitely. So do you want to talk about what having that brain trauma when you're 16 means for you today? What does your day-to-day life look like, and how does it affect your today? And then we can talk about sport. I think we just need to talk about, because I think it's really important for people to understand, like this isn't something that happened to you when you were 16 and over time things have slowly gotten better. Like you still deal with this today.
So I still have epilepsy. So I went off medication for ages because my grand mals were fine. And when we moved up to Kerikeri from Auckland, I pulled away from the busy of Auckland, and I think my headspace got a lot better. Just it was a lot more slower. And I'd have seizures every so often, usually relative to my core temperature rising. So when I had COVID, influenza, like when I was really sick, I'd have seizures. But otherwise, I was in a space where more often than not, I was actually really good seizure-wise. Over the years, I think I've done a lot to get my mental health better. And that's... Oh, I've kind of forgotten what the question was. What was it?
No, you're doing really well. I just said, like, what does it like look like today?
So, sorry.
Because I know it's like an evolution from, like, you know, like... It's kind of hard just to jump to today without explaining, like, how you've got into today. Do you know what I'm trying to sort of try to ask? Is because like people might think, oh, you know, like I want people to, I want people to understand like what you do today is so amazing because you're still struggling. Like you still like, I think what you touched on recently on your social media is like, I still can't drive. I still can't go out and do things with my children. I still, you know, I still have like things that happen with my brain that aren't what other people have happened to their brain. I just want to sort of,
So I feel like over the years I've come a long way positively. So that's been awesome. But as you said, it does still hold me back. So because that occipital lobe where I had the bleed was affected, I have no right peripheral vision. So right peripheral vision falls in both eyes. So if you think of like looking square at someone in the face, right now I'm looking at you and I can't see half your face. If I bring my hand up to the right side of me, I can't see my fingers. So I'll never drive a car because I'll never pass the eye test. And I would almost be better off just having one good eye and one eye that's glass. But the fact it rolls through both eyes, it's huge. It affects, just too much, basically. So as an adult, it is a struggle because I've got two beautiful babies that I can't even drive them to school. I can't pick them up from school. I'm in that phase now where my son is 7 and I'd love to get him into after school sport. I can't. How do I get him there? And, you know, I have so many friends in my corner that are like, oh, Tams, I'll help you. But it's beside the point. The point for me is I want to do that. And even like Kieran, my husband's amazing. Like he, you know, finishes work a little bit earlier to help me. And, you know, he goes to work a little bit later to get the kids to school because we have tried other ways of getting that help. But I just constantly feel like there's someone intruding in my life because I can't drive. So I'd rather Kieran be the one to help me. As I said, like friends always offer, but just wanting to do it yourself is huge. And with us, like I'll never be the fun parent because I'm not the parent that took the kids to the playground. I'm not the parent that took the kids to, I don't know, go off and do this activity in school holidays. The only time they'll do it is with dad or me having someone take me. So then in theory, say it's grandma. Grandma's the fun one. So I wear that as a parent quite heavily. My kids are awesome. Like we're teaching them, you know, our little boy, he's almost 7. I'm like, Harley, when you're 16, you can drive, Mum. Like, we're edging him on. And like, my daughter, I don't think seen me have a seizure, but Harley has seen a couple, and he's really good. Like, he's got empathy because of it. And so that's been a big one, for us, that we make sure Harley is on board and
understands the why behind it.
And the kids do get frustrated if Kieran's not here and I'm here and say my parents are unavailable, we're stuck here. So they do hate that. Like, they know there's this really cool playground in Kerikeri and Mum can't take them to it. So as a parent, I'd say it really emotionally affects me. And also it's just hard. Like, you could do something as simple as like, I want to book a haircut. Who can I ask that can take me? Oh, that time doesn't work for you? Shit, okay, I can't get a haircut. Yeah. So you're constantly working your life around someone else's schedule. And even socially, as I said, I've got friends that help, and all my friends are amazing, but it's based on their needs and their, if they suddenly last minute don't want to go, okay, cool, that's cancelled. Or, hey, I'm running 45 minutes late. Okay, now I'm 45 minutes late to a birthday, because you've linked it with someone helping you. And although people are always willing to help, you do get let down a lot in there. And it's not a thing on them, but it's something that I am like, okay, like it constantly is. You're always feeling like a burden. Or you could bring someone and you can hear it in their voice that they're like, oh, okay, yeah, okay. And I'm like, why the sigh first? And it doesn't always happen. People are usually more so willing to help than not, but you just constantly feel like a burden.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that is hard.
And also it also comes back to your personality, that I feel like you would find it so hard to ask for help. Like, you've probably always been someone, like, even just going back to that day where you called your dad and you're like, it sounds like you hadn't actually really ever called your dad for help. So you've never been someone that's found it easy to be like, I'm struggling, I need help.
Yeah, 100%.
Even like from that day, that was the first day you'd kind of asked for help when you were.
I was fiercely independent, I would say, and now I have no independence, and I really struggle with that. And this is a part that I always struggle with and feel ungrateful for, when friends and all these amazing people in my life are willing to help. I don't want their help. I want to do it. I just want to take my kids to the beach and just have that moment with me and my 2 beautiful children. I don't want someone spectating or being a part of that experience. And it's just something that is it selfish to want that? I don't think so. It's just something that the help's there. More often than not, the help is there, but I don't want it. I want that independence. But that's the big one. The non-driving thing would be the big one. I still have seizures. I've recently also been diagnosed with another form, the 3rd form of epilepsy that I have, which is the petite mal's, which is what you were talking about earlier, where you could be in a situation and suddenly I'm vacant, or you don't notice the vacancy part of it, but you notice the words don't come out right afterwards. So about 6 months ago, Kieran actually asked me quite abruptly, was like, when's your next neuro appointment? And I was like, why? Because it was something that I had been aware of, but there's just always something going on with me that I'm like, oh no, it's nothing. I'm probably just tired. Like, I'm sick of having something wrong with me, basically. And it was interesting. And so when he mentioned, I'm just noticing you're not getting your words out properly. You're a bit slurry, or you're just mixing words up, mixing words up. And so, it's just straight away got referred back to my neurologist, and she could see that I've probably always had this type of epilepsy, but because I was medicated for other types, it went, it wasn't really in my life and I wasn't that aware of it. But then it just became really, really noticeable. And I just kind of sounded a bit illiterate. I just couldn't talk properly. So that's one that I'm dealing with now, because I had the anniversary 17 years since my bleed, and I'm still dealing with a new diagnosis that stems back from 17 years ago. So it's still, although it's such a long time ago, it is still so consistently a part of my life. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
So I suppose we can probably now talk about how sport or multi-sport and running has played, would you say, a positive influence?
I'm here because I've found running again, I would say, when I look at where my mental health was and the phase of my life, I didn't have any will to live. There was a period where I just was like, what's the point, And so I overheard my mum, and it was when we were living back in Auckland, and she was in the kitchen and she was actually crying to my dad, and she didn't know I was awake, like it was late, and I could overhear her in the kitchen, and she said something along the lines of, just so worried about our TJ, like when is she going to find her sparkle again? Because I was really like, you probably remember me, I was this obnoxious little thing that bounced around,
super outgoing, like really really like confident in yourself,
and I wasn't that. I mean, maybe in high school, like people would think that I was that because I was trying to be tough, like I don't know, but I know that mentally I was not that, and that comment hit home hard because I thought I was putting on this mask so well at being okay. Like I've overcome this, I'm real good. And hearing mum know that I was struggling, I was like, oh shit, the mask is off. And so that was a big one. And so the very next morning, I think I'd had like 4 seizures that week. Like I was fatigued, I was tired, I was depressed. And that morning I decided to go for a walk. And Mum was like, oh, where are you going? And she was concerned because suddenly I wanted to go on this walk by myself.
Can you remember how many years after that was?
I would have been probably about 23.
Okay.
Oh, no, this was before you. So I probably would have been about 21, 22.
So this is 5 years after your brain trauma. You've decided, I'm going to go for a walk.
Yeah.
You've heard your mum.
So it's about 5 years, and my timeline, sorry, is terrible.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
And I just decided to go for a walk. And we lived in Mangere Bridge at the time. There was Mangere Mountains, really beautiful, beautiful mountain that has this amazing landscape. So every day I just made a goal for that week. I was just going to walk to the top and just sit there and ponder. And that's what I did. And it was kind of me just like trying to find zen. And then one day coming down the hill, I was like, I'll just jog it. I want to run. So I ran down the hill and I was like, oh yeah, that wasn't too bad. And then so every day it kind of just went from walking to running a little bit more. And at this point, my parents, I mean, they weren't overly concerned if I started running or not. Like that was on me. They were never like, you can't or anything like that. But I knew I felt an element of guilt. So I'd walk down my road, and as soon as I got off that road, I'd run. So I'd run up the mountain, I'd run home, and then I'd wait a little bit before I went inside so I didn't look too sweaty and tired. And I had a dog at the time that I'd take walking, and so she wasn't an epilepsy dog, but she basically was. So like she was my went with me everywhere kind of thing. And not when I would go on walks, she'd go with me. It just, for that, as soon as I started running again, I was like, holy shit, I'm happy. Yeah. And I wasn't happy in the scheme of things, but in that part of my day, I had 2% of I feel like Tamsin. Who even is Tamsin? I feel like Tamsin. Yeah. And so I just kind of said, like you said just before, I said, fuck it, I'm going to run. And so I started getting back into running, and I dabbled. Like it wasn't something I could do competitively, but I just did. Like I didn't sign up to many events. I've never been about racing, but I'd go off and do these events, and I noticed as my endurance picked up, I had freedom because I lived in Mangere Bridge and I wanted to get to Newmarket without sitting on a bus. Everyone else at this point had cars. I didn't want to go on a bus. A bus depressed me because I was the only kid catching the public bus. So I was like, I'll run there. So I'd run, go to 277, run home. It was just, it gave me a touch of what having a bit of independence felt like, and I was hooked on that.
Did it feel like freedom to you?
It didn't feel like freedom, it was freedom. And that was huge. And I can't explain it, but it was like euphoric. And it, for me, I was like, I'm not going to stop this. I don't care if it kills me, I'm going to do it. And I got real stubborn on that. And that was the thing, I was like, I honestly don't care. And I remember I had another appointment with my neurologist who I didn't like. My neurologist was a dick. And I just said to him, I was like, I don't really care. It makes me happy. If this happened to your 16-year-old daughter, would you break her dreams? Like I was pretty, at that point I was like, nah, don't tell me how to live my life.
And I feel like you probably felt prior to that, like you weren't living 100%, right? No. Like what kind of life it is?
I was following the rules and I was listening to what I was, and I was miserable. I was miserable. So I broke the rules and I was happy. So and so I've kind of always said that running will be the thing that I do, and I'm not going to give it up for anything. So that's how I
it's your absolute bottom line.
Line. Like I do. And then we over the years, then obviously we moved up here, and I dabbled, but I was became a PT and all of that, like I found my love for movement again, and that's how I became a PT. And it stemmed a lot. Everything kind of stemmed. My life now has stemmed from running.
Yeah.
So where I am in life now is because of what running, or essentially movement, has given me.
Yeah.
And everything I do now is in a way to encourage other people to have that same feeling.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a runner, but you can move your body in other ways. So, yeah.
So what inspired you then to get into multi-sport specifically? Because running's one thing, but then...
you're ready to go to multi-sport.
Cycling and swimming, yeah.
So I feel like I had my brain hemorrhage, so my future was always going to be a different thing than what I had envisioned. But I think I would have found triathlon anyway. So in high school, when I was at St. Kitts, before I had my brain bleed, I did duathlon. I was the swimmer, and then there was a runner. Or I had a really good friend who was a cyclist, and I did his swim and run. Like I kind of dabbled in it, and I think had I not had my brain bleed, I would have found triathlon as an adolescent, because I was really good at swimming, I was good at running, but I wasn't a cyclist. But I feel like maybe I would have been groomed into trying triathlon, and I would have given it a go. I mean, I don't know, maybe I thought cycling was geeky, I'm not sure. In high school, you never know, but I feel like I probably would have found it regardless. But yeah, as an adult, I had friends who were dabbling in it and ticking off these cool things, and I'd watched them over the years tick off things like a half Ironman or a marathon or whatnot. I'm like, I reckon I could do that. Like, just need to learn to cycle, because it was the one thing I hadn't done, and I liked the idea of challenging myself. I feel like since I had been told I couldn't, I wanted to prove that I could. So I liked the challenge of triathlon. So I was like, okay, screw it, I'll do it. Started with absolutely no idea, and that was that.
So what kind of results can you share with us from triathlons and running events?
I think people will be quite surprised by this, because you're just, the way Tamsin talks, she's like, I'm just kind of dabbling in all these things, but...
well, I feel like I am dabbling. Like I'm not...
No.
Make it, but then ends up winning. And
I feel like I saw you a couple of weeks ago, and you were near the top of a running race. So
I did do... Well, this is actually a really special race. So I did the Kaitaia 21 trail, and it actually fell on the anniversary of my brain hemorrhage. So so it was really special. It was when I saw the date, Kieran didn't even pick up on the date, but I was like, okay, I'm going to run on that day. And the day is always a bit weird for me. Like it's not, I don't know how to feel on that day. I went in and just ran, and you'd messaged me and said like, oh yeah, like this, you could do pretty well here. And I was like, nah, I just want to run.
Downplayed it,
I was like, I just want to run. And on that day, I don't feel like I raced. Like I had a good run, but I didn't race, and I came second. So that was cool.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was cool. And I didn't have the fire in me when I saw was it Simone?
Yeah.
She at the beginning, I think the first like 4K, she was off, and on other days, I feel like I could have tried to fight to keep that competition in that. Yeah. But on that particular day, I was like, I'm not here to race. I want to run. I want to enjoy the beautiful trails. I'm here. Yeah. So that was like almost like it was a really special Sports Northland event for me.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so
do you want to talk about when you have raced? Like, so you've done multiples, half Ironman, and you've done, how many Ironmans? Was the one Ironman?
I've only done one. I've trained 3 times, but I've only done one.
And that was this year, right?
Yeah, so Cairns. It was this year in Cairns in June.
Yeah, and so do you want to just talk us through, like, I remember seeing like your marathon time, and it was like faster than my freaking marathon PB, and I was like, Tamsin, seriously, just stop being so good at everything.
So I've done quite a few 70.3s, but I've never found the distance is my distance. Yeah. So every time, this is no ounce of arrogance, but every time I've crossed the finish line, Kieran's always said like, how do you feel? And I'm like I could do it again. Yeah. Like I'm not there to go speedy. I just want to keep going. Yeah. And so on those events that I've done, I've never raced them, but I've never felt like I've given my full potential either. And I don't think speed is my full potential. I think it's longevity. I get better as the hours tick by. So as I said, I've trained 3 times for an Ironman, but COVID affected it, and I also needed to have hip surgery. So I was born with a dodgy hip. I've had 2 surgeries on that hip, and eventually I finally could tick off my Ironman. So yeah, I had to defer. It was an Australian event I was supposed to do pre-COVID, so I had to do an Australian event to use my deferral. And we went with Ken's because we've got family there, and we were like, actually, let's have a family holiday and let's tie it all in. So yeah, I did really well.
Yeah, do you want to talk us through that day and how you did do?
Well, it was an interesting build-up, so I didn't get to train for it the way I wanted to train for it. So
that's right.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! Like just as if I forgot about that.
So it was not the greatest build, but I was leading up to it. I had a bike crash. I wouldn't even say it was a crash. It was a really misfortunate event. I got stung by a bee on the neck. And I flinched, my arm flinched, I seized up the front brake and I just flipped over my handlebars. And I was pretty much at standstill at the time. It wasn't going fast, so it wasn't a really exciting crash or anything like that. But I shattered my collarbone. So this was like 11 weeks out from Ken's, which is pretty much when you start your build for an Ironman. And yeah, it was terrible. I'd ruptured all my clavicle ligaments, my collarbone had pierced through the belly of my shoulder, and my shoulder was just in a bit of pieces. So I had surgery 4 days after that, and yeah, we didn't know if I was going to go to Ken's, but I tried, and I was like, okay, I'm going to keep trying. And I couldn't swim, I couldn't run, but I could get on my bike. Because I'd obviously just had surgery and my body was in pain, my heart rate was through the roof, so I just had to zone 1, zone 2, just keep my legs pedaling over. And it was like that for many weeks. I think I went for my first run 3 or 4 weeks after surgery, given like my surgeon allowed me to do it. He was like, yeah, just wear your sling, like you're fine, you've been put back together. And again, heart rate was through the roof, like training was real mediocre. I did like 1 run a week, and it wasn't until 7 or 8 weeks out from Ken's, 7 or 8 weeks after surgery, that I tried to swim. My coach was like, just go get in the water, like you don't have to swim, but put some fins on and just go up the pool, do 1 arm stroking. And I did 1 lap of it and was like, nah, this is not happening. So I just ditched everything and was like, I'm going to try swim. And I swam 2K. So I was like, oh, we're on. Like, we are on. Yeah. And I messaged my coach straight away. I sent him a video and I was like, I can swim. And he was like, oh my God, Ken's is on. I was like, Ken's is on. Yeah. So I think from there, I swam 2 times, that time and maybe 2 other times. And I ran 2, before I tapered, I had 2 weekends where I had like a massive ride, which I had to do on Zwift because I couldn't do it out on the road. And then an hour run. And then the following weekend was like an 18K run in the morning, an hour run in the afternoon, followed by another 18K.
That wasn't the day when Kieran did the... Was that the day when Kieran did his ultra? No, that was different. Okay,
no. So
I'm thinking about that day because you did something crazy that day.
I did something training wise
as well. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, you did the...
So I had these 2 big weekends that were... like, this is your only build. You're not going to get much of a build. And then the weekend before I started tapering was the Paihia Sports Northland Ultra and 22 kilometre run. And Kieran, my husband, had signed up to do the 50K. And I was like, I'll just sign up to do the 22K. And then at the end of the race, I'll keep running and I'll add on another 10K and I'll tick off a 32K run before Ironman. So that's what I did, yeah.
That's awesome. And then your results at Ironman, I think, are pretty impressive. So I think you need to, considering the build-up. Like most people would be like, okay, I've literally completely fucked my shoulder up. I'm not going to do this race, but not Tamsin.
Well, I think like it really helped that I had no expectation. At that point, I had everyone asking me like, what do you want to do? Like, what's your time? I was like, I just want to get to the fucking finish line.
Like, to the start line.
And I was like, I don't even know if I'm going. So I had no expectation. I think I work really well when I don't have any pressures, and because I think there's so much love for it that I just want to enjoy it, and I think that's why I actually did really well. I overall in my age group, I think I came 6. Yeah. Was it 6?
6th or 7th?
6, no, it was 6, yeah. So going into it, I thought my swim was going to be shocking, so I didn't look at my watch, my pace, anything. I swam for feel. I thought I'd come out of the water at like an hour 20 and start the day, and I came in 12 or 13 minutes quicker than that. 3rd out of the water in my age group, which was cool, but I didn't know any of this. This is like Kieran could see it, but I had no idea.
Did he tell you?
Nah.
I didn't actually know.
Yeah, the time that I don't think the
Karen's here, by the way, too, everyone.
And so I did really well in the swim, but I had no idea where I was. Got to the bike, knew the bike was going to be hard, so I kind of thought I'd do like 6 hours 10 maybe. I'm not a strong cyclist. I've got so much work-ons on the cycle front. And I came out off the bike at 6 hours 20. I just couldn't stay on aero very long on my shoulder. And then I got to the run and I could see everyone else around me breaking down. Like the run was the coolest part for me because you see all these amazing athletes that passed me like with arrogance, flying past on the bike, and it got to the run and I was like, hey, like now we go. Yeah. And so there's athletes left, right and centre like vomiting, like just gut not good from all the gels and whatnot. And my motto when I come off the bike is like, now we fly. Yeah. Like, so that's what I did. I just did a really good run. I don't think it was my fastest possible run. Absolutely not.
Was it 3 hours 40 or something?
It was 3 hours 36.
3 hours 36.
That was ridiculous.
Incredible. Yeah.
And so sorry.
Yeah, no. That's nuts.
We just touch on that. Yeah.
It's 24 minutes faster than my marathon PB, and I didn't swim or bike before that, so that's incredible.
Well, we had Tamsin's coach Rob Dellymore. He was messaging me when she started the run.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 or 4 Ks in, and he's like, "How's she going? Does she need to woo down?" Because her pace was lightning, like 4-minute 20s maybe off the bike.
I think the first 2K actually was like 4:10, like 4:05.
I remember seeing you come off the bike and just looked, like she said, like her race starts now. And she was just flying, and we were communicating because the course was laps, it was 4 laps, so we got to have a good vantage point. We would see her go out and see her come in, so we were able to communicate the whole time about how she was feeling, and she looked $1,000,000 right through. To be honest, the whole run just looked like she was in such a good place. And I think we knew what place you were nearing the end, because we could tell you like you're in 6th now or 7th now, or 5th was not far away type of thing. But it was so impressive to watch. Like she was just bouncing around that course.
It was so fun. It was so good. Yeah. I mean, Ironman runs suck because you have to run 10 kilometers 4 times. Like it's like a slog mentally. But I just think every loop I did, I was so happy to be there. Like it's such a weird mindset, but I was just like, I'm here. Like, this is my time now. Like the run, as I said, like there were athletes just who'd overburnt the bike and now, so it was just fun.
All those runs to Newmarket paid off.
Exactly. And do you know what's funny about this? And I know I am the girl that always finds the silver lining, but I think I have so much strength because of not driving. So although driving is that one thing that I wish I could do in a heartbeat, in ways I don't know if I'd be as good of an athlete. I mean, I'm not saying I'm like this phenomenal athlete, but I don't think I would be as strong mentally if I didn't have that, because it's pushed me for like, say I want to go to a physio appointment, often I run there. Like things like that. Like
Tamsin often will run to the swimming pool.
Wow.
She'll run, it's 10 Ks from our house to the local pool.
Yeah.
And often in the middle of summer when it's open, she will run to the pool, swim 3 or 4K, then I'll pick her up.
Yeah.
And it just makes it, you have.
I don't even want to see your daily step count.
But what endurance for you though is like your resilience is born from your trauma.
Hugely.
And a lot of us don't have an experience like that to draw from, and so our hard is running out of oxygen while you're running, or needing to have a break, whereas Tamsin's hard is many levels above ours.
Yeah, and they have done studies on that, right? Like people that have experienced all sorts of different trauma are often quite good at endurance sports, because what you consider to be hard is not what Kieran or Hayden or I
one of those things
hard.
One of those things that I do say in my head when, like, you know, when your quads are burning, you're like, Tamsin, this is no brain hemorrhage, go on. Like, and I do have that to
this
revert
is nowhere
back
near as hard as what I've been
you think
through.
this is sore? No, honey, it's not. So I do have that, and it does allow me to dig a little bit deeper. So it's such a like catch-22. Like, do I wish this never happened to me? Yeah, I do. But at the same time, would I be where I am right now? Nope. I probably would have a pretty boring life. Like, it's made me think outside the box. It's pushed me out of my comfort zone. It challenges me, so I now know to challenge myself too. Like yeah, it has a positive. It does.
Yeah.
And I hate that, but it does. Like,
Yeah.
it definitely does.
Yeah, that's such a cool story.
It's almost as if the doing like these endurance events is a reward for you.
It is.
Like that's what you get your kicks from. Like I've overcome all this other shit,
Yeah.
and now this is my time to shine.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what it's like?
Yes, it is. I don't like the term time to shine because I don't want to be in the spotlight. Like, it's not about like winning or anything like that. But I think I look back at that and I see like a really broken teenager. And now I'm like, I'm a badass adult.
Yeah.
Like, it does make you see it in a different perspective. And it is my reward. I feel like I have to not miss out on a lot of things, but there's some things I just can't do and won't do. Whereas this, there's no limit there. Like, I'm still yet to find my limit.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, it excites me because what is the reward? Like, what is going to be the challenge that I do that I'm like, okay, that broke me. Actually, that was Wild Kiwi. Just Wild Kiwi. Far out. That was, honestly, that was bad.
It was so funny when you came into that and you were like to me, fuck that.
We have one rule about Wild Kiwi. We don't talk about Wild Kiwi.
Oh yeah, Wild Kiwi. I'll go back for redemption. But it's that was the run that broke me more than an Ironman.
Yeah.
But yeah, where I was going with that is that I don't think Ironman's it for me. Like, I want to keep doing Ironman. My goal now. I've got an amazing coach. Karen mentioned his name before, Rob Delamore from Foot Traffic Coaching. I'll tag him in there.
Yeah.
He's awesome. He's so cool, and I've discussed with him what my goals are because I don't know what my goals are really.
Well, because you're just doing it for fun, right? Like, you're doing it for enjoyment. Yeah.
And even for him, he was like, like, what's your PB half and what's your PB marathon? I'm like, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, I have events that I've got times for, but I never ran them to do a PB. So I crossed the finish line going, oh yeah, I probably could have taken 15 minutes off that. Like, I don't have set PBs. No. So I'm now in that phase of trying to work out what my goals are.
And that's what you're working on this year, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to do Auckland Marathon, right?
Yeah. So we want to get a baseline PB for the marathon, and I want redemption with Auckland Marathon. I did Auckland Marathon, was it like a year and a half after we had our boy, and I was aiming for 3 hours 10, and I was ahead of the 3 hour 10 pacer. I was in a real good space, and then I fell apart at like 28, 29 kilos, vomiting on the sideline. And I didn't know what was going on because I felt so good. Yeah. And because it was, you stay in Auckland and then you have to catch a ferry over to Devonport. The race starts in Devonport. We stayed in the Airbnb in town, and on the table of the Airbnb was a fruit bowl. I'm a fruit addict. I just walked past, picked up an apple, ate the apple, and carried on my day. What I was vomiting was apple peel. So the apple just broke my stomach. It was so acidic. I was
thinking you'd hit the wall. I was babes, we've all been here. You just hit the wall. You had food poisoning.
I definitely thought that apple tried to kill me. It was so bad, and so I ended up coming in at like 3:28 or 3:30, and I had a couple.
Hearing me being like, fuck yeah, 3:29. That's mean. And you're like,
so it was the wheels fell off, and I never got to get my PB. So I'd like to go back and try for 3 hours 10 again. Yeah. I don't know. We're going to try, but I don't know if I will because I'm now doing triathlon. You're training for 3 disciplines.
But I feel like with you, if you didn't get it, you actually don't care because you're just happy to be there.
Yeah, that's it. And now I'm like, okay, I'll go back and I'll finish it and I'll try. I'll give it my all. If I come in at 3:15.
Oh, yeah.
Let's also be honest. In Taupo 70.3 last December, Tamsin ran a 1:31 half.
1:31 half.
At the back end of that half Ironman. So I'm pushing her for sub 3.
No.
Because Tamsin, even when Kaitaia, where she turned up and ran well and ran second.
Yeah.
The whole build up to that, she was like, this is your run, Kieran. I'm just going to cruise around there. I was supposed to do an extra 10K that day, but I didn't. And she's like, oh, you'll just have to wait for me to finish and then I'll come with you. And we stood at the start line with the boys, Sam, Nathan and Trey, to have a laugh. We're going to sprint them off the line. And within that first hill, 200 meters, Tamsin's just gone.
Yeah. To be fair, so were Nathan, Sam, and Trey. Yeah. Well, me, don't you worry.
And I was like, oh, yeah, she's on. Yeah, so she can run, and
I loved that run at Taupo 70.3 because that was 5 months after I had pretty major hip surgery. Oh, maybe not 5, March. No, so it was probably about 8 months. And it was
just another surgery.
Just another surgery. And it was like the build wasn't that great as well for that one, but it was just me just going to tick my first one back after a little bit of a setback of a year. And my coach said to me, first 5K, you need to slow down. You don't want that hip to blow up. We don't know what it's going to do. So the first 5K, the first 2K, whenever I come off the bike, I can't slow down. I look at my pace and it could be 350, it could be 4. I have to let my legs find their groove. You either come off the bike jelly or you come off flying. And I come off flying and need to pull back. So those first 2K were pretty outrageous. And then the next 5K, or maybe 4K, I genuinely made a point to slow down to 4:45 minute pace just to ease into it. And then when I did that and finished that, I was like, oh, I didn't really, I feel sweet. And then that's when I had my race. So I came in with a 1:31 with a couple of Ks there where I genuinely slowed myself down. So in hindsight, we myself and coach have said, you actually didn't, we know you don't need to do that. Just go. Yeah. So, yeah.
And hence why you don't know what your limit is, because I feel like every single race you've unfortunately you've had to deal with some sort of adversity,
pretty much,
whether it's your shoulder, whether it's your hip, whether it's eating an apple peel.
The apple peel got me the most. So I'm excited now for the next 12 months to see what I feel like I've put everything health-wise behind me. I'm still dealing with this new type of epilepsy diagnosis and whatnot, but that's nothing. That's nothing. And I want to see now what the next 12 months bring, and that's why we're trying to see what my PB is for the Mara, and I've qualified for 70.3 World Champs. That's not a competitive event for me. I've made the call. 70.3 is not my distance. I am never going to be these fast, whippy cyclists, and I lose way too much time on the bike. But New Zealand Ironman, I'd love to try and qualify for Kona. Might come last at Kona, cool. But at least it's
at least you're there. You'll be like that person again. I'm just happy to be here.
Honestly, it's the bucket list for me is to try to get to Kona. So that would be awesome. And if I get to, if I qualify for Kona, that's my year's focus, because Kona's in October. October. Yeah. And if I don't, that's when I'm I've already said to Rob, I'm okay, this is where I go ultra. And he's okay. So, I don't really know what the next 12 months are going to bring. It depends what I do in the way of racing. But the dream is eventually to do ultra triathlon. That to me, I'm
kind of like that thing that Simon Cochrane
does. He's I want to be the female version of him without all the titles and world records and stuff like that. But he's
you just want to do that distance.
I want to do that distance. I look at it and I'm that's so cool. Yeah. And people are you're mad. I'm yeah, I am. But I just think it's because I haven't yet found my limit, and maybe that's because going back to what you said around having that struggle to. And that hard, I know what hard is. So whenever I finish any event, it doesn't feel like it matches hard. Yeah. And I know it's different, it's not comparable, but for me, I've always got more. And you could change that narrative to be okay, we'll go faster then. Push, absolutely push the boat out on speed. But I don't necessarily want to go fast, I want to go long. Yeah. So,
that's so interesting. Do you want to talk a little bit about your run club, because you're sort of starting to give back to the sport that you love so much and share your love for that sport with others now? Yeah. So you've started a run club. What's it called?
Reset Run Club.
Yeah, cool. Yes. And what's the idea behind that, and what are you trying to achieve with that?
Well, originally it actually started off with a group of us that would just sign up to Sports Northland events, and we all kind of just got a kick out of motivating each other to do it. We'd all go and tick off these events, and it was real nonchalant. It was just, let's go and do it. This is how we want to spend our child-free Saturday morning, and that's what we'd do. And so it was super, super not anything official, and we made it in the beginning phase it had a jokey name. We're unofficial, and then we kind of got a little bit more official because people wanted to join it, so we had this jokey name that was the unofficial official run club. Did it I got my friend to do a little logo for it, and it was just funny. It was a complete piss take. But then people actually started following it and be like, hey, can I join this run club? We're like, oh, okay. And it was a bit of a mouthful. And then we actually jumped on Instagram and searched and realised our name, there's a place in Australia that's like the unofficial run club. And we're like, we just look like we've copied their thing. So we decided to change the name to Reset Run Club. So Reset is we own a personal training studio, group fitness and Pilates studio. So Reset is my branding, and we changed it so that my business has affiliation with like Sports Northland, Pure Sports Nutrition, LSKD, and we can link the two. And we just want to get Northland running on the map. I actually listened to a podcast you guys did with Trey, and he said the same thing, but like the far north, there's so much potential for running up here, but you just, apart from like Sports Northland's events, there's just not enough on the calendar.
And there's not the groups.
No, there's not the groups.
I don't think there's the groups, because in Whangarei we're so lucky.
You've got Hatia, right?
We meet Wednesdays, we meet Sundays, we meet, whenever really. Like, you know.
Plus a lot of the people think to start running and they have to do it by themselves.
Or be really fast.
And
it's like,
our idea is that because we do it, because we enjoy it, but because of Tamsin's business, she in particular has dealt with building people up for so long that for us to create an area for people to come and feel safe and not judged and go for a trot with all levels of ability, it's so uplifting, and we get a huge kick out of it personally.
We had it this morning, and I even said in the car, I was like, man, I'm buzzing. And the reason I'm buzzing is because one of my clients came along to the run. Today she ticked off her fastest 10K, and she set her longest run distance, which was 13K. And I ran at the back with her. She was like, oh no, like I couldn't do it because I'm not fast. I'm like, me and Kieran are there. Like we're not there to run fast. We're just there to keep you guys going. And it was so cool, and she was so uplifted, and I was like, oh, this is why we run. Like it was really cool. And all morning I've been buzzing because of her achievement that, you know, for some people they run 10K just like that, but for this, that she's worked for it and PB'd. I'm like, that's amazing. It was a hilly run.
And at the end of the day, when you're running and training competitively, you are doing a lot of it by yourself. So to have 45 minutes, an hour, whatever, once or twice a week with other people, making it social, not worried about like a target or something, it actually brings a lot of enjoyment to the program.
And I think of even where I started back, like when I refound running. I didn't start off as a warrior, you know, like I ran. I mostly walked. And so people always, you would know it with you guys having your connection with running as well, is people go, oh no, in order to run, I need to run a 5K flat. It's like, no, you've got to build into it. And that's what
you shouldn't do. That's absolutely what you should not do.
You will pull your hammy. Like you will tear your calf. And so I just think I so desperately want Kerry to have a running community, because there is one other run club, but the community, that's all there is in that club. And there is potential for more and different types of people. And I just want everyone to feel like they can get the runners high. Like it's so, like even if that's a walk run, like even at Kaitaia on the weekend, two other clients of mine went up and walked it. 11K. They're like, it's the longest walk I've ever done. And I'm like, that is so cool.
Totally.
And that to me is more impressive than me coming second. I can't give a flying. You know, like you doing something you've never done before and being so like wowed by yourself, because that is cool.
Such a massive thing to overcome, to line up on that start line 100%. When you haven't done anything like that. And like you say, like it's super impressive to come. I think it isn't super. I know you don't, Tamsin. But like I do in some ways agree with you, because
I run all the
turning
time.
up at a start line, that can actually sound, if you haven't done it before, really intimidating.
It's terrifying.
Right?
Terrifying.
Like and because you think of it as being a competition, like it's a run race, but it's not. Like when you actually turn up to, particularly the Sport Northland events, it is tailored for literally participation.
And that's it. And if you can get more people participating, like amazing. We have less diabetes, less blood pressures, like through the roof.
Well,
like,
let's not forget as well that if you consider the pointy end of the field in any event, let's just talk triathlon for a second, the elites can do an Ironman in 8 hours. Phenomenal, right? And you just are blown away by their ability. But what about the weekend warriors who take 20 hours or something, and they are out there for 20 hours, you know? Coming in the pitch of night, And that's when the finish line is buzzing the most, because
Well,
those
for me,
ones,
they're the athletes on the day.
and we get such a kick out of seeing people out there just doing their thing, because ultimately all these sports is just you against yourself, really.
And I think a big one for me as well, because I'm such a keen runner, and people are like, oh yeah, I went for a run on the weekend. I'm like, oh my God, let's do a run together. They're like, oh no, I couldn't run with you, you're too fast. And I'm like, oh, but I'm happy to run at your pace. Like, running's running. And I think that's why the run group is so cool, because we do run at their pace. Like, Kieran and I aren't going out there to be at the front. Yeah. We're like, okay, go on, whoever is the front, and we sit back. Often one of us sits in the middle pack, and we take turns being at the back. Cool. And I mean, we've only done, 2 runs? Like, it's new. Like, it's very new. But that's how it's always going to be. And if we can get more numbers, that's where you put people off in different pace groups, and you're never alone. So today, like, I just kept running back and forth, just trying to find where the groups were, and just making sure that no one was ever by themselves. Because it just makes it so much more achievable. And for like Hannah, now she's gone and ticked off this really cool run. She now knows she can go out on her own and run 13k because she did it today.
Exactly.
So
she's got the confidence.
She's got the confidence now.
That's what you've built in the run club, is the confidence, right? Like, that's what you're giving people, is confidence.
And I'm an addict for running, so I just want more people to find running.
Totally.
Come on, guys.
I know. I'm trying to get my friend into it at the moment. I'm like, gal, like, you honestly just need to do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off.
It's so
and
hard.
You don't have to run fast. I'm like, if anything, please, if you go out for a run, please go slow, because I think people go out and they try to go like really fast, and then they're like, like after a K, because they've like,
and they're sore for a week. But you want to be able to do a run and be sweet and go again the next day or every 2 days and build into it.
Like, go slow and go like short.
Just want to change the narrative on running. Like, people assume you have to be hard and fast. It's like, no, just go out and enjoy it. And that's why I do it, because I enjoy it. And so if you can inspire more people to get on board with that, I feel like it will make a difference, not only with like health conditions but mental health. Huge. So that's kind of where we're at with that. And we've got some cool goals. Like, I really want to start pushing, as I said, getting Northern on the map. Like, we've got some ideas to get some cool events going, and got a cool fundraiser that we're planning to do. And like, I always within the gym do a fundraiser each year, and it's just exciting. And it's cool, and it's our way, as you said, of giving back
to something that you love.
We're just pumped.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my gosh, I'm getting excited. I'm like, oh my
Wait,
gosh,
what?
I need to like,
Well, we have to do
I might get home and I'll be like to my husband, we're moving to Kitty. No,
Can you though? Can you?
we'll have to take Reset Run Club down to Whanganui for a
just
day.
franchise it.
It's like the F45 of running. Funny.
Funny. I don't know if we'll ever be as big as like Harty and Luke runs. That is so cool. We're like, can we come down one weekend?
You should come down for a Harty run. We can do it.
We do miss it a little bit. Just having things like that. Like, we do live in an isolated area, and you just don't have access to what other bigger cities have.
It's the population too, isn't it? Really, it comes down to that, doesn't it?
Well, even I just think, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like running's growing. Like, running is suddenly like, it used to be CrossFit, and then now it's Hydrox, or whatever it's called, and people are really, all those memes that are going around. You get to 30 and you sign up to do a half marathon. It's actually true. It's the it thing at the moment, and I feel like for someone who's really passionately into running, like, let's build on that. Like, get more people into it while it's actually attractive.
Definitely, while it's cool, because
then it won't be
things don't seem to be cool forever.
And everyone knows the hardest part is starting.
It's starting,
and that's it. And if you can create an environment where it's inclusive, it's accommodating, and it's low stress and inviting, then you're on the right foot.
Totally agree with that.
Just chasing the runner's high for everybody.
Just forcing it on everyone. I think that's like a really good place to wrap up. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Because I just feel like that's a nice like full circle thing, like, where you've kind of, like coming from where you've started, and now you've got so much from running, and you're giving back now to the running community.
To mention that you qualified for like every world champs in every event that you've done. And how many surgeries did you have in 2023?
6.
This is where Karen tells us all the truths.
She was very humble, but
it was a rough year.
Her story is very unique.
I just had a rough year. I had lots of surgical needs, and that's the first part of why my build for Ironman wasn't the greatest. But but we're through that, so
2025.
Yeah,
because 2024 hasn't been perfect.
No, 2024 was meant to be the year, and then I came off my bike, and I was like, fuck 2024.
Yeah.
So like 2025, right? Let's go. But
yeah.
But I think just from my perspective, my favorite memory of you and your events is finishing your full Ironman 1 year on from your hysterectomy to the day, and having both kids there to cheer you across the finish line. It's just like a script you can't write. Just a phenomenal experience for everyone, and we're just in awe of what you can achieve, and how you don't let anything hold you down.
And you're teaching your kids that, right?
Oh,
like
hugely.
They're seeing like what you go through, and you've crossing those finish lines. And I think those lessons that you're teaching them, like whilst you say like, I feel like I'm like not there for them because you can't drive and all that, I think you're giving them so much more, honestly, Tamsin. Like, you're incredible, and like it is honestly, having a mother like you, like they couldn't get any better. So
it was actually really neat. My little boy, like he and I butt heads from time to time, and at the end of my Ironman, it's the most like special moment for me. What did he say? He's like, Mummy, I'm so proud of you. Like, you're my superhero, or something like that. And sometimes when he's like in a mood, he'll call me Tamsin because he knows it's disrespectful. And I'm like, little shit. And he's like, Mum, I promise I won't call you Tamsin again. And I was like, oh, my darling. It's just so funny. But it was a really cool feeling to know your kids were proud of you.
Yeah, and definitely.
I've always said, like, yes, I do this for me, but I also do it for them. Like, I don't want my kids to know that Mum gave up. Because there was a point in time that I did give up, you know? And I want them to see Mum doing hard things. And for ages, Mum was doing harder things than Dad. Like, he's about ultra now. So. Like, it's just cool. It's just neat for your kids to grow up with that. And and there's a couple of weekends that we'll book in and we actually don't have the kids there. And that's because, you know, it's quite nice for us to have, you know, 3 weekends in a year that we go off and have our time together, and we're both into the same thing. So but the big ones, the special ones, we want the kids there because it's cool for them, and they see, because they see us training. Like, they come in, they walk, they see what
it's showing them what that is what you're training
outcome.
For. Like, this is what all.
And I'm very excited. My boy has finally agreed to do the mini beast. So I've tried to get into a couple of events. He's like, no.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, come on. He's like, no, but now, because there's mud, he's on for mini beast. I'm like, okay, Horne household, let's go.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Oh my gosh, so good. Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
No,
like, honestly,
welcome.
I've been wanting to have you on for a while, but I know it's like it's your story, and I was just really wanting to be cautious of like you telling it at the right time. And I saw you sort of starting to post a bit more on social media and opening up a bit about it. So like, so proud of you, because I know it is hard for you, Tamsin, because you are so incredibly humble. So like, really proud of you, and you are an incredible woman, and definitely someone like I look up to. I've looked up to you for years without telling you. So like, honestly appreciate your time, and I think so many people will get a lot out of this, whether you've suffered from brain trauma or not. Everyone has their own heart and things that they have like suffered through, whether it's, I don't know, mental illness to physical disability. Like, I think everyone had something to gain out of your story. So thank you.
I think that's it for me, is I for so long haven't shared, I mean, I've touched on it, but I've never dived deep, and it's been a big wake up call for me that everyone does have a story, you know, and when you share your story, it's powerful. And if it can motivate one person to change an aspect of their life where maybe they're holding themselves back, then you win. You literally win the day. If you can get one person to come to Run Club, one person to, I don't know, go out for a walk when they feel like their depression is like eating them alive. Like, if it can motivate someone to just make an ounce of change, then
particularly because what you're dealing with is what we call an invisible injury. So you don't wear a sling, you don't have crutches, people don't associate your disability as something that they see all the time, so you don't get that same whether it's empathy or whatever it is, the right word. So you suffer in silence sometimes because you're not
and
able to show how you feel.
It's just people don't see you and think, oh, there's something wrong with you. Like, people would never know there's something wrong with you, but on the inside you're like, oh, this is
I get it all
hard,
the time. Like, you're so lucky, you're this, you're that, and I'm like, you don't even know. Like,
so
you don't know.
Knowing there's other people out there that you can lean on each other and
I just think more people need to share their stories because there's so many people suffering, and I just think there's not enough out there. You know, we all talk about the highlight reel on social media. Fuck the highlight reel. Like, show the vulnerable, because I'd say 99% of people have vulnerability, and the people that are sharing all this happy stuff are probably the most vulnerable.
Totally. And way more relatable too if you are sharing that part of you. Like, it's not really relatable when you are just seeing the highlight reel, right?
No, not at all. Just adds to the pot of probably making more damage than it does good.
Yeah, totally.
But well, thank you for having me.
No, that's all right.
I'm so sorry for saying the F word on your podcast.
Oh, no. I mean, I'm on the podcast, so it's fine. So thank you, Tamsin, and thank you, Kieran, for being here to help as well. If you're keen on Reset Fitness or Reset Run Club, check the show notes as to how you can get in touch with them. And as always, thank you to our listener, and a big thank you to our show sponsor, Trek Trail and Fish. Visit them, trektrailfish.co.nz, to buy all your running gear, and remember to use our discount code for 10% off your order, which is RA10. If you're new to the Run Adjacent podcast, please make sure you follow or subscribe on the platform you're listening to. You can find Run Adjacent on Instagram and Facebook at Run Adjacent. Until next time, happy running!